Everybody get through the breakfast, everybody okay? Coffee? Everything on board? Last night, sometimes you're happy to see it here, sometimes you have to, you're not happy to see it here, but it's been really a great conference. A lot of great information. Everybody's been very cordial and friendly, and like Mr. Randall spoke last night, that's how it should be. That's working together, producers and potential producers. There's a lot of ideas that come forth to the nation, to the minerals state itself. So we feel very good this morning. So I'd like to ask Councilman Randall to come up and start the day off with a prayer, please, sir. Would y'all please stand?
You bear with me. Thank you. Councilman Pepper. Itati Wakanda, Napale, Washnobe, Chile. Jaji Ribate, Nikashia, Pada, Wajaji, Katsia, Katnisi, Dali, Wajaji, Hampale, Washnobe. They Konsea, Wakanda, Jinky Day. He's not with a Okista, my mineral council, mineral state. Wajadi, Wajaji, Eastani, Day, Wakanda, Jinky, they come with that. Thank you, Father, for this beautiful day, this beautiful third day of our Mineral Council Summit, Father. Bless all those who are here today, all the producers, Father, all the presentation, the presenters, Father, all the guests and all the relatives and friends, Father. Thank you for this beautiful day. Bless this the third day of our meeting today, Father. Thank you again for the rain and the need that you bestow upon us for our survival, Father. Thank you again for this day and bless this meeting in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, our first session, ladies, could you come up, please sit down? I've got Allison Herrera, Shannon Duty. Allison's a reporter. Shannon is the editor for the Osage News. Billy Ponca is Billy Ponca. What can I say? Billy used to work here in town for several years, up until about a month ago, and she left town. My social life crashed. And last, certainly not least, is Donna Brown. Donna's like a sister to me, and so we tease a lot. So they're here to talk about a very important subject. For the last couple of days, we've got to hear from industry experts here, and we were happy about that, and felt good about that. That expressed their concerns and their visions and their aspirations for our reservation here. And today, I wanted just to touch a little bit on the other part of why we're here. It's because of us being Osage people, and I couldn't think of more qualified and very intelligent women to tell their story today and share with you some of their feelings and things about why this minerals estate is so important, why it's so important to have a good relationship with producers, why it's important for us to stand together, as Mr. Reddington spoke last night, as a twig, and then you have a bug and they stand a lot more stronger. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Herrera right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to be in Osage County. It's an honor to be on the Osage Reservation. And I'm really honored to be in the company of these incredible women here. I'm a reporter. I work for APM Reports as an investigative reporter, and I also worked on the podcast that many of you have listened to called In Trust, which is a Bloomberg and iHeartMedia podcast. And about a month ago, myself and Shannon, we were on a public forum to talk a little bit about that podcast, along with the host and main reporter Rachel Adams Heard, Congressman John Maker, and Brian Hosmer, from the Oklahoma State University, and Tara Dameron, who you may know from the White Hair Memorial. So what I thought I would do is just, I'm going to play a little bit of one of the podcast episodes, episode 4. It's about the guardianship, which I think is a really important episode because we have Myron Red Eagle here in the audience. He's a direct descendant of Myron Banks, who is featured in that episode, and then also it has Billy Ponca in this episode too. So I'm going to play a little bit of it, and then the other story that I worked on just recently was about Lily Morell Burkhart. Lily's home is in between Ralston and Hominy, and she left it to the Oklahoma Historical Society to be a shrine to her ancestor, Chief Bahuska, and also to show off her home, and she wanted to break these stereotypes about what it meant to be a wealthy Osage woman. And her home now has a collection of these really incredible Osage items, like a wedding coat and lots of finger weaving and lots of other Osage clothing, and her papers, and lots of records pertaining to the Osage Nation. And that's where we did some of the research for the In Trust podcast. And I encourage you to go out to the White Hare, to encourage you to go out and learn more about Miss Merle Burkhart and her life. And Billy, again, is a direct descendant of, Lily was Lily's great aunt, and I was really fortunate to get to know her and get to know, talk to her about Lily's life. So I'll play a little bit of the podcast, and then maybe we can move on, and then I can play a little bit of this story if we want to play that one too.
An original podcast presented by T-Mobile for Business and iHeartRadio. Join host Jonathan Strickland, Future Today.
Hello, Billy Pop.
Jake Investment Checkup. I met a woman named Billy Ponca. I had heard of Billy. She used to work at the White Hare Memorial, the Osage Research and Learning Center. And while we were talking, I told Billy I was trying to find someone who knew an Osage man named Myron Banks Jr. Billy hopped on the phone, started calling friends, relatives,
and his name was Myron Bangs, B-A-N-G-S, and he sued his guardian.
I was curious about Myron because the Drummond brothers were his guardians, some of the white men the U.S. government had put in charge of the finances of Osages and other Native Americans. In total, the three Drummond brothers were guardians to at least 10 Osages, children and adults. And in 1941, the United States sued them over how they handled Myron's affairs.
Myron Bangs.
Yeah, they've never heard of him.
Okay.
All right. And Harold, spread the word. I need to know who he is. Of course, he's deceased and gone for quite some time.
I found the lawsuit in the National Archives. Myron had commissioned a private audit on his accounts and sent what he learned to the government. He left behind a ton of documents with his lawyer. Other than Myron Banks Jr.'s records, there isn't a whole lot in the archives about the Drummond brothers' guardianships. The official records are under seal in the Osage County Courthouse, so this is one of the most complete looks inside a guardianship that I've seen. When I've asked members of the Drummond family today about the three brothers, Fred Gettner, Cecil, and Jack, and whether anyone knew anything about their guardianships, they either told me they didn't know the brothers were guardians, or if they did, they'd always heard it was because their ancestors were trustworthy. There's a moment in the tapes with Jack Drummond and his biographer Terry, where Jack brings up guardianships. It's in the middle of an unrelated conversation, after Terry asked Jack about his relationship with his brothers.
You seem to, as a boy, have been friendlier with Cecil than with Gettner. Is that so? Would that be true?
Yes, Gettner. See, Gettner was always jealous of me. Cecil doesn't used to be. Cecil just loved land.
He's griping about his brother Fred Gettner again. Remember, Jack was mad he didn't get that bonus after he made a huge profit at the store. He was also mad his brother ended up with control of the store once their dad died. Jack lays all this out to Terry, all his frustrations with Fred Gettner. Then he says,
I always want this said or repeated and never bring it out in anything you write. But Gettner was a hypocrite. He was very selfish, and he was the administrator of my father's estate, and somehow he ended up with the big end of it. Of course, he said I'd 7 shares, but then he dealt with the Indians. Of course, he made a lot of money off the Indians, and he was administrator of the estates, and he was guardian for several Indians, handled all their money, and all the money never passed through Gannett Drummond's hands. Some of it stuck to him, stuck to his hands.
Stuck to his hands. Jack seemed to say his brother Fred Gettner had been up to something. And what I learned from Myron Banks Jr. was that Jack wasn't alone in thinking so. One of Fred Gettner's boards thought so too. And at one point, so did the United States government. This is In Trust. I'm Rachel Adams Hurd.
So for those of you who don't know what a guardianship is, it's a racist, paternalistic policy that the United States government put into place around the time of the 1906 Osage Allotment Act that basically said that Osages were incompetent to handle their own financial and personal affairs. And so a judge would appoint a guardian to oversee Osages' accounts, to limit how much money they could spend or not spend. And some of the stuff in this podcast is painful to listen to because you can hear in the way that Fred Gettner talks about Osage people, some of the language that's used in the archival reporting is, of an era where Native people were viewed as less than human. And I think while it's painful to listen to, it's an important subject to report on because I know we're all here to talk about the oil and gas, about the mineral estate and the importance of it and what it means to shareholders. But I think this history is really an integral part of that and the way that Osage people were exploited and taken advantage of. And I think that it's just my personal opinion that this podcast has shown a light on that and been able to facilitate discussions among people to talk about that exploitation and to talk about how to move forward from that. And so in this episode, those tapes that you heard were part of the Fred Gettner's when he compiled his biography, he spoke to his biographer, and all of those tapes were at Oklahoma Central University, and they're just a gold mine of information about the Drummond family, one of the largest landowners here in Osage County, and about how they acquired a head right, the way in which they overcharged Osage citizens for basic goods at their hominy trading store. And I think, you later on in this episode, you can hear from Gettner Drummond, the current Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, and him talking about this particular lawsuit about Myron Banks. And I encourage you to listen to the podcast, and I think it's really relevant, and I'm really glad that Billy participated, and that some of the people whose descendants, who are descendants of the people in this that were talked about in this podcast, are here in this room. And I think that was a really important part of the reporting process, was to connect these documents and the archival material to people who are living in the present day, because people are still living with this history. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Billy.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. And I have heard you all are having a real good time visiting, chatting, telling stories, making new memories. And I want to thank Anthony for asking me to be here. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Don Barone. I'm from the Gray Horse District. I want to welcome everybody here. Like Billy said, it's a pleasure to be here. I hope we can give a little bit of insight on what they've asked us to talk about. Like I say, thank you, Anthony, and thank everyone for being here.
Hello, my name is Sharon Shawduty. I'm the editor of the Osage News, but I am also from the Gray Horse District. I am not a shareholder yet. Thankfully, my parents are still alive. So, but I'm happy to be here. I really don't know why Anthony asked me to be here, but I'm here. There's a lot of history that goes with our mineral estate. There's a lot of emotions and historical data that goes with it that ties Osage's and our culture to it. I do have a lot of thoughts and complex feelings about the oil and gas industry and our role and our reservation and the history of our people. I think I do bring a different perspective because I've seen both good and bad with the mineral estate, and while I know it's a very important asset for our people and that we should never ever let it go, it has caused a lot of pain and suffering. My dad's great-grandfather, Joseph Bates, was murdered for this money, and my full-blood grandmother, Mary Agnes Waygoshi Shannon, she had a guardian when she was a young girl, and she was orphaned at a young age, and a lot of her wealth was taken and scammed away by her guardians. And so one just has to wonder what life would have been like for our people had this money not brought so much greed to our reservation. But on the other hand, it has brought a lot of good. So like I said, it's very complex, and it means a lot to us, and I just want to thank everyone for being here and working with our Osage Minerals Council. It's not an easy job for them. I know they have a lot on their shoulders, and I know that all of you are trying to be in this business right now when things have been hard. So I just want to wish everyone well and see where this conversation takes us.
Thank you, ladies. Now, part of this was, for me, it was a personal journey, because I know these ladies, and I know a lot of them lost loved ones, but again, touching on the importance of the relationship with the producers and moving forward, whether it's our plight against regulations and things like that, we need to stand together and fight for this minerals estate, because it's something that's been around for over 100 years, and we want to be around another 100 years, and that's to be able to be in partnership with you folks. And so again, this is just adding a little bit of the history to this. Some people haven't seen these podcasts, and then, like Ms. Herrera said, it's painful sometimes to see the plight that our people went through. And again, we fought through it. We got good relationships with our producers. We have this summit here today where we're good with each other, we're friends with each other, and we're trying to move forward. We're trying to figure out ways to enhance the minerals estate itself, and it's not easy. It's a difficult task. Mr. Redden will sit there, and he's, it's the personal part of it for me is that I see the hurt in some of my people, and then with the advent of the movie coming through, it shed a light on stuff, and oftentimes, like Ms. Judy said, there were some bad points, yes, but there's been some positivity to come out of that too. It enables a lot of our people to sustain a basic lifestyle. That's why it's so valid and important for us to fight for this minerals estate and to help increase it and develop it and do all the things, whether we're talking about CO2 sequestration, talking about drilling more wells. It all has to do with us and the Osage people working in collaboration with the shareholder, with the producers. And so again, it's something that we're pushing forward together, and we're here unified, and that's the message that I was wanting to, and I just wanted to be able to have these ladies share a little bit of their personal story and their family's story about why it's so important that we hang on to this and we fight for it, and we don't, and it's not about giving in, it's about standing our ground, whether who it happens to be against. But again, we do it better together than we would separated. So again, I always go back to what Mr. Reddick said last night, it's just looking around this room and had a chance to probably shake hands with everybody in here and had a friendly conversation and break, share a meal together and things like that, and wanted to understand, wanted you guys to walk away with this, with understanding that how very important this is to all of us as Osage people. And again, thank you guys for everything, and so we'll turn it over and do a little bit more of this. And Mr. Pipe's been over here, hopefully. We'll talk about the 1906 Act.
I was just, as Anthony was talking, I was just thinking, maybe some of you producers don't think, oh, well, why do I need to know this history? I think it's really important, and I'm really glad that you're here to listen to us. And I wanted to say something about, I'm going to have Billy talk about Lily Morrell Burkhart, her great aunt. But I think, Lily is a person who I think, her resilience and her how she lived through the 1920s and lived through the Osage murders, I think, and being able to, as a woman who spoke fluent Osage, who had wanted to leave her legacy to the state, to leave her legacy to the Osage people, I think is a story of her surviving like really tough times and being able to share that. And I think, also wanting to say, I'm really proud of the wealth that I have. I really want to show that off. I really want to show people that this is what a wealthy Osage woman, to quoting Billy here, Billy told me that when I interviewed her about what her aunt was like, she was like, she just wanted to break these stereotypes, like in the 1950s, where people saw Native people as like in Westerns and being this like, being very stereotypical. Lily wanted people to know, well, like, I'm not like that. She went to the 1958 World's Fair and spoke to television reporters there. Gave talks, and she flew. She traveled at a time when it was really difficult to travel. Only wealthy people could travel, and Lily was wealthy, and she was like, I'm proud of that. So I'm going to play a little bit of this story, and then I'm going to have Billy talk about her great aunt.
In 1984, the Oklahoma Historical Society took over the management of Lily Morrell Burkhart's estate, and today they run the White Hair Memorial, just as Lily wanted. But as KOSU's Allison Herrera reports in the final part of our series about the Osage woman's legacy, there continues to be questions about what exactly that legacy will be moving forward.
Dan Swan was a graduate student at the University of Oklahoma, had a new family, and was ready to move to Osage County.
I was incredibly young and was very excited about the opportunity to move to the country and, have this grand adventure with my Osage friends.
The opportunity he had, run the White Hair Memorial, Lily Morrell Burkhart's former home that was now a shrine to her ancestor, Chief Whitehair. It wasn't going to be easy though. First of all, the house was stripped down to the walls. Ernest and Byron Burkhart sold all of her furniture. The estate owed $250,000 in legal fees, and Osage people were upset that Lily's estate was outside of Osage hands. He knew he needed to get people to trust him if he was going to be successful. He needed Osage input on how to run the White Hair. So he turned to his friend, current Principal Chief Jeffrey Standing Bear.
He said, listen, if you want to learn about the community, you got to throw a dinner.
So early on, Swan threw a big dinner and explained, hey, the White Hair is a resource for you. What do you want to do at this house?
And people were like, we got to preserve this language. We want to have classes. We want to teach our kids about plants. And it would be good if we could do an exhibit.
Language and culture classes became the center of the place. Tara Dameron, the current director at White Hair, says that's how she learned this place existed.
So we would have sort of an hour of language, and then we would have an hour of culture, and a lot of that would just be Uncle Harry, talking about different things, talking about the English, talking about the Native American Church, talking about there's all these different facets of Osage culture.
Today, the Osage Nation has a strong language department. Their orthography is available on iPhones, computers, and tablets, so you can write and text in Osage.
Well, to me, it is not for the general public. The general public is welcome if they want to come. It's for Osage people. That's what Lily Burkhart wanted. She wanted that to serve Osage people.
That's Dr. Bob Blackburn, the former executive director of the Oklahoma Historical Society. He recently retired after serving the agency since 1989. Blackburn feels strongly that Lily's home shouldn't be a museum, but rather a research center for Osages. After all, it has a vast library donated by Osage historian Louis F. Burns and thousands of records from the National Archives on top of Lily's own collection of Osage material culture items.
To me, it should remain a research center and not a museum. Let's support the museum nation, develop their tribal museum.
Trey Thompson, the current executive director of the Oklahoma Historical Society, met with Osage Nation Principal Chief Jeffrey Standing Bear earlier this year about transferring the trusteeship of Lily's head rights, land, and the White Hair Memorial over to the Osage Nation. Basically, returning everything back to the Osage.
Are there other partners, are there other groups within the state that could take on some of these and maybe, devote more resources or tell the story better than we can?
Thompson acknowledges some of the financial challenges in fixing up Mrs. Burkhart's home and says there are about $500,000 in maintenance repairs needed there. Right now, there is no law in place to transfer those head rights or the trusteeship back to the Osage Nation or to any of Lily's living relatives like Billy Ponca, her great niece. And there's been some concern over how funds from Lily's estate have been handled because the money from Lily's head rights have been moved out of Osage County.
Stop there. Billy, I wanted to know if you could just talk a little bit about Lily's legacy and like what she meant to you.
Well, first of all, I would like to kind of clarify something. There is a list that comes out from the tribe that does list the entities and people that do have head rights that are non-Indian. And I want to say, first of all, I do 100% agree that those should come back to the tribe, whether it be a descendant, whether it be to the tribe, to the Minerals Council. I feel very strongly about that. The difference between the OHS and these other entities are the OHS does not have any way to promote or do they have any money that comes to them from the estate. They're just a trustee. That's all that they are. They do not benefit from, she had like 2 2/3 head right. She owned several hundred acres of land and then the home. So I think that's very important to know because when the list comes out, they're on it. So it looks like that they profit from that and they do not. Now I have met with Mr. Thompson since this has come out with the interest because I was called by friends of mine that are with the nation and they were concerned about did I know what was trying to transpire. And Tara Dameron, like she said, is the director, and I had visited with Tara about it, and I want to say that she's very, very important to the White Hair. She does an amazing job and is doing an amazing job, and she has a lot of ideas for the future for the White Hair. Now, my aunt, whom I'm very proud of, by the way, was what she wanted to do. She wanted her home to be where you went in and viewed it, kind of like the Ponyville Museum type thing. But with the litigation, because she didn't have any children, but she had nieces and nephews, and there was 5 of them. And 3 of them were trying to break the will. 2 of them had been left something. And here's what happened. Had those 5 stayed together, they probably would have broke that trust. They probably would have broke that will. But they divided. 3 went one way, 2 went the other way. The 2 that were left something was my mother and my uncle. And the other 3, the 2 said, if you let us have what she left us, and then we'll split the pot 5 ways. Those 3 said no. We won't do that. We'll split it all equally, or we'll go on our own. That's what beat them. Had they went ahead and let the other two have what she left them, and then divided the pot 5 ways, I really truly believe that they would have broke that trust. But it didn't end up that way. Now, as she mentioned, my Aunt Lily had married Byron Burkhart later after all this reign of terror was over with, and they lived together up until her death, which was a natural death, and then he lived quite some time after that. So she had divorced him, but she didn't ever make him leave. And in the will, the way the will was broke was he proved he was a common law husband. But he did not get the headright money. He did get all the personal belongings. And at that time, the state bought back the collection that is out there today for $10,000. Now, Mr. Swan's first official duty after he took over for the state, for the white hair, was to evict Ernest and Byron Burkhart. So that's kind of amazing when you see what has transpired from there to now, and with the movie that has come out. So since the furnishings was all sold and it was left with an empty house, Mr. Swan took a survey in the community. The tribe has already had a very long-lasting museum. So, but there wasn't adequate academic information in the community on the Osage. So after he took the survey, talked with several people, had the dinner, went back to the board, they decided to turn it into a resource learning center. And you know, it's always kind of been, it's in the country. So, I mean, you've got to know where you're going to get to it. You've got to be there for a reason. You're just not going to drive down the road and say, oh, there's White Hair Memorial. You're going to have to find it. But one of the things about it is it's just an amazing amount of information. And one of the things that Mr. Swan did was he went to Fort Worth, and he had a lot of first microfilming of what happened to us, about us, and with us during that time period. Some of that film goes back to the late 1700s. And then he has a lot of music and cassettes that came from Smithsonian. So that was the start of the research part. And then Mr. Burns, after I took over, Mr. Burns donated his library to the White Hair. And at that time, he had been to Kansas, he had been to Missouri, he had been here to Pahuska, and to think about where he wanted his legacy to go. And he wasn't satisfied with any of that. He did want it left in the county. So after I visited with him a little bit, his only concern was that the White Hair is in the country, and would it have much accessibility to people. So what I did that year, at that time, Mr. Blackburn gave me $2,500 for programs. So I saved that up, and at the end of the year, there was a college that came down. Mr. Shaw brought his students down every summer, and I had Harry Redigal Jr., I had Kenny Bighorse Sr., I had Dan Cass, I had Van Bighorse, and a lot of the people at that time that were involved in the cultural of our tribe. So we did a hand game, we talked about singing, we talked about the language, all kinds of programs. And then when the college students was there, that's all Mr. Burns had to see. He seen that it was able to be accessible by large groups of people. So he donated that, and the Smithsonian offered him $1 million for that library. And he turned it down where it could be left in the safeguard of the White Hair Memorial and of the Oklahoma Historical Society. When I met recently with Mr. Thompson and some of the board members, and I wasn't there to try to change their mind. I wasn't there to tell them that we're going to get the family together and try to break this if you do give it back to the tribe. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, what did she want? And I think everyone in here, Osage or not, you have an estate. And when you leave that estate to where you want it to go, that's what you wanted. It's not what I wanted. It's not as her great niece, and I'm gonna say, well, you know, we're gonna do this, this, and this, and we want that money back. If you're gonna give it away to somebody, then you give it back to us. That's not what I'm here for. When I went and met with them, I wanted them to know the background. I wanted them to know the history of why she did what she did and why the Burns did what they did. And I think the reputation, anytime you have a museum or a resource learning center, you have your reputation. I think the state was a little worried about, the OHS was worried about, well, our name comes out on this list that we profit from this. They do not profit from it, but she left it under their care. Burns has left it to the White Hair and to the OHS. Now, how does that look for future people that want to donate to either the White Hair or to the Osage Tribal Museum or to the OHS if you're not going to keep your part of that commitment? And they gave me a readout. I do understand the problems with the financial. The house was built in the 20s. It is old. It does need repair, but the money is there. The money's there to do that. And the only thing that I can say that is a hindrance is it is so far out and security's a problem. Now, I worked and lived out there for 18 and a half years. And I had a security guard because, of course, being alone and living in the country, Dr. Blackburn felt like that was a big priority for me as an individual and for the White Hair and for the collection. So, you know, what she really wanted was for you to be able to go in and view her home. Well, that didn't happen. But I think it's the next best thing to it because there's so much out there. And I've been gone for several years now. But there's a collection called the Blanche Garrison Collection that they started cataloging that when I was there. They're still cataloging that. There's just so much historical value to what is there. I don't know in the future if something can be done to move it into town. Whatever they decide to do, you know, we will have to accept that because that's what they have, their job is. But I think it's important to the Osage people, to people that come and do research on the Osage people, that that facility stay a resource learning center. And again, it's not what she wanted, but I think it's the next best thing to it. And and thank you again for your time.
I don't know why I'm here. I don't have the knowledge, the ability these other ladies do. I can speak for my family. My grandfather, great-grandfather, was Simon Henderson, an original Lautee. And I do know, hearing from my family, that generation were very concerned about their descendants. They wanted them taken care of. And I know my great-grandfather wasn't an educated man, but I've heard numerous times how intelligent he was in making decisions, as were these other people at this time. I've seen a lot, like Shannon said earlier, you know, this has been a blessing. But it's also, on the flip side of the coin, you know, there was bad that came along with it. I do know that some of the head rights would get out of our family's hands, and it was important for my grandfather to acquire them again and bring them back into the family. So, with the Minerals Council, we do need to stand behind them. We do need to have a voice. We do need to get with them. We do need to, you know, relay our ideas, give them some, you know, personal concerns, because they're working for us. And like I say, this was a very important issue for our ancestors. Me, myself, I am still benefiting from what my great-grandfather did. I do know a lot of people depend on this. It's how they live. And that being said, you know, I remember hearing stories. I was even with my mother back in the day, you know how this money it was theirs. I remember going to Pahuska, going to the hill, and we would go, me and my sister would be out playing, you know, while she'd go into her business. She would have to go into them and ask for what money that was hers. And they wanted to know, what do you need it for? Well, you know, and she had to explain and justify, you know, her reasoning on getting her own money. We've come a long way since then. And I can, hopefully, our Minerals Council will continue to progress forward and help us to make it easier for us. And like I say, you know, I can go on and on and on, you know, but we just have so much time. But I was asked just to kind of, how did this affect you? How did this affect your family? And it has, and I remember, you know, I'm in my 60s, but I still remember. You're older than I am. So don't look shocked. But you know, it still affects me. It still affects me, you know, even when I was in school. It wasn't the thing. Everybody was ashamed of being Native American. It was accepted within Osage County because Osages were accepted. You get out of Osage County, get away from the Osages, they were lower class citizens. I've seen it happen in my lifetime. I've been denied access to things because of my race. And like I said, it hadn't been that long ago. So, things are changing. And with change, it's going to change within minerals. And so we need to get behind our Minerals Council, put our trust in them, and like I say, visit with them, put your 2 cents in. It might seem small, but all these small things lead to big things, and we'll get things done. But that's about all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Just one thing I want to add is that my grandfather turns 89 in 2 weeks. Yes, he's been blessed with a long life, and he still asks me, what's payment? I can't impress upon you all how much the work that you all do with our Minerals Council means to a generation of Osages. It literally saves lives. I mean, it provides a livelihood for a lot of our elders. You know, there are a lot of Osages that support you and want you to do a good job, and we want to work together. We want to see our Minerals Council succeed. We want to see all of you succeed because our people benefit, you benefit, it's good for all. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit that, you know, there are a lot of Osages that we love and care about that really depend on the good work that you all do. So that's all I have to say.
Well, I was hoping they would get around to some of that feelings there, you know, that was the reason why I asked these ladies to be here today. It's just, again, like I mentioned, it's a personal journey. It's important. Grandfather's 89 years old, I've known him know, it's 50 years, probably not as long as Donna has, you know. My father lived to be 90, and he retired from Phillips Petroleum in Barstow after 40 years, you know, and he, part of that head right that he had, or the head right that he had, he depended upon that, you know, and he passed it on to, you know, his 5 sons. And so the importance of it carrying on is dependent upon the decisions that the Minerals Council makes, the partnership they have with producers, and the partnership we have with BIA. You know, see Mr. Trump is sitting out there, I appreciate you being here again today, sir. And so again, I just wanted to add just a little bit of the personal story behind some of these people, their families and things like that. And almost everybody out here is Osage, except for a few of you. And so that's why they're here. They're concerned, but they're in support of what you guys do. We face things together, and it's better for all of us if it goes forward. So once again, I'd like to thank these ladies for being here today. We got about, see Mr. Postrom showed up, so it's good to see you. And so we got about 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions or anything like that, we can do that. But if not, then we'll wrap it up and take a 5-minute break, and then we'll bring Mr. Postrom up. Is there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
The latest data I could see was, as far as the value of one headright, was around, in 2018, it was around $17,000 a year. Where do you think it needs to be to provide a decent standard of living?
That's a good question.
In today's money, because like in the 80s, I think it was like 40,000.
Yeah.
So where does production, you think, need to be?
Well, I think
in order for
production, they're probably better answered by some of these gentlemen than even yourself, but I think that, you know, there was a talk yesterday about, you know, wanting to drill 200 extra wells a year, you know, I mean, at one time, I think with Miss Curry, a council member, she was the superintendent, and I think during the peak time, while she was sitting there in that position, I think there was 400 wells a year drilled there, and then today, I think maybe 10 or 15 a year, you know, and then so, I mean, that's a testament to these people here, they're still here, you know, I mean, they're fighting the fight just like we are, and we're supporting them, and but yeah, it needs to be increased, you know, and then so with the price of oil and the cost of living, I mean, everybody thinks, you know, you drill more wells, well, you know, because go buy a pipe and hire the companies and that stuff like that, all that stuff's went up triple too, you know, so I mean, it's not like producers and the people like that are just pocketing 3 times the amount of money, they're having to put more out to get things done that cost them a lot less 20 or 30 years ago, you know, so again, it's all exponential the way it works across the board. But as Osage, as shareholders, we look at that bottom line, and each year, monthly, every quarter, it's on a decline. So that's why we're entertaining thoughts about, as the Minerals Council, listening to about CO2 sequestration and certain things like that. Recovery, different methods, getting it out of the ground, getting more out of the ground with less water, and all those things like that. Regulations coming down Washington D.C. You know, it's complicated, very complicated. They've talked about getting head rights given back that were given to non-Osages back in the day. We're trying to figure out legislation, how to make that avenue, to make that possible. Right now, there's not really a clear way, but there are people that would like to return those. And so again, it's not easy, but there's a lot to do, and a lot of the councils before us, they face these same issues for the last 117 and a half years, you know, and it's no different from us. We still face things that are ongoing, you know, and we'd like to be able to just draw a line in the sand and move forward and then have a clean slate, but that's not going to happen, you know, and so whether it's windmills, whether it's regulations, whatever it happens to be, even sometimes we get in our own way, you know, we're human. So again, it's a complicated issue, but you know, I think we've got a good bunch working together, and we all understand each other and moving forward, and we understand being able to do things together. It works a lot better than just, you know, like Mr. Reagan said last night, sometimes there's compromise. I like to think of resolutions and things like that. You know, compromise is a hard word for me, you know, because oftentimes when you're put in a position to make decisions for people, you feel like your way's the right way, you know, and you feel like you're on the right side of the issue. You wouldn't be standing there, you know, debating for something to get it passed through or fighting against something, you know. So oftentimes we're all not on the same sheet of music, but we find a way to get to a common goal, which is helping the people, the shareholders that depend on us to put us in those chairs, and that's our focus. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed that. I just had a quick question. What is the current status with that list of those non-Osage headright holders? Is that publicly released? Like, what is the status of
I'm not really for sure on that, you know, because like I said, I've been public.
It is
Okay.
public, okay, okay. I was just curious, thank you.
Mr. Riggle?
Thank you, Billy. You know, when all is said and done, the money was all settled out. Right, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I was done, right, she did all of it.
Yes.
Very nice lady, I was young. But I was wondering, did she leave anything for the reservation of the,
Her estate, yeah, no, her estate, and it was in litigation for many years. Yeah, and after that, there was a substantial amount that grew during that time. And unless it's changed, and I don't think that it has, I didn't really bring that up with Mr. Thompson recently, but the way it operates is off of the interest of the principal from the trustee, and there's over $1 million in there. And I don't, I'm sorry, I didn't really look at that sheet to tell you exactly what the expenses are right now. But when I was there, it was costing over $50,000 a year to run the White Hair. So there is a substantial amount of money. Of course, it's not funded by the state. It's all donational money, all of her money. And again, it's like I said, the state does not support it monetarily, but they do not profit from anything monetarily from the trust that she has. May I say one more thing? If you don't mind, I would like to see who the producers are. Would you mind standing or raising your hand? I'd like to applaud you, and I'd like to thank you. We wouldn't have this without you. And as all of the turmoil and all of the expense that you go through, it's like Anthony said, you're still here, and you are our livelihood. You've educated our kids, you keep us with our electricity on, so I want to thank you personally.
All right, any further questions? All righty, please give these ladies a hand, please. Let's take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back with Mr. Pipes in with the discussion on 1906 Act.